Hi, I'm Shannon Carr. Welcome to the Hopeful Hearts podcast. I am the founder of Hopeful Hearts Ministry, and I am joined with my executive director.
Yes, hi, I'm Tamara Lexo, and we are glad to be here with you today. We have a really good topic today. I think it's a good topic.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And we were kind of going back and forth, like, okay, well, how do we title this? Because
Yeah.
uh
Was
really
it
what we're talking,
I don't wanna
yeah,
do that. I don't wanna
I
feel
don't
that.
wanna, I don't
I
wanna
wish we
get
could
help,
have inflection in our titles. That's what I wish we could do.
right? Yeah, like
Or
a
liar, liar, pants on fire.
exactly like a different font that knows we're being
Yeah,
silly.
exactly. And maybe
But
we
we're
could figure that
talking,
out.
yeah, I'll work on that. So we're talking today about when we have gone through trauma or abuse and we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to get the help. And you may go, well, why wouldn't you want to get help for that?
Mhm.
There's a million reasons why people don't want to get help. And I think one of the first things that I really started thinking about is that trauma and abuse are um, they're kind of subjective because you may feel like something that you have gone through is just really, really traumatic, and someone else may go, "Oh, honey, no,
Mhm.
that's nothing." Or maybe you're saying, "You know what? It really wasn't that big a deal," and that's where the lie starts to come in, right? Don't you
Mhm.
think? And we say
Absolutely.
not that it's not that big a deal. So I think one of the first steps, and we talked about this before, one of the first steps before getting help is really like this coming out of denial, right? That we have to say, no, you know what? It's not normal. It's not okay to be abused as a child. Um, say it's not okay to have to comb through the remains of a tornado to find your loved ones' bodies or possessions. I mean, I think sometimes we think, oh, trauma and abuse are just about what someone did to you. But, when
Right.
you've been traumatized, I think about the people in the Midwest right now who are going through, the aftermath of a tornado. And,
Mhm.
um, that kind of stuff it's traumatizing to your body, to your emotional
Oh,
well
and
being, to your
it makes you
spirituality.
get triggered. Yeah,
It does.
absolutely.
It
When
does.
we all went through Harvey, I know that
Ugh.
there are people, just for those of y'all maybe watching this that don't know where Tamara and I are, we're in Kingwood, Texas. She and I both happen to live in Kingwood. We're just in our own homes doing this,
Right.
by the way. And if you guys don't know, back in 2017, I feel like we talk about it a lot. I'm sure that other people have way forgotten, I'm sure.
Right.
But
We talk about
Hurricane,
Harvey and people are like, "Who's Harvey?
who's Harvey?
Who's
Is he a
Harvey?
rich guy? Like what?
Why are they
No,
so mad
Hurricane
at him?"
Harvey.
Right.
Hurricane Harvey came through and devastated our area. I mean, it 6 feet of water in the Hopeful Hearts offices, and we had just gotten in those offices. And then my own home, I was rescued by Cajun Navy. I mean, it was up to my waist, lost everything. And I know Tamara housed a lot of people. She was feeding people. And there was just so many people that to this day, I mean, that I'm glad you brought that up, Tamara, because that too is a trauma. I know that you and
Mhm,
I both have sexual abuse in our past.
mhm.
We both have some very, very, childhood traumatic experiences, but
Right.
trauma is trauma of many forms. And I think what we talk about addresses all forms of trauma. So
Right.
please, if you're listening or watching us, um, and if you haven't gone through some what you feel is some major childhood sexual trauma or even neglect or abuse, but yet you still
Mhm,
feel a sense of, neglect or like I said, triggered by certain things because of an event that's happened in your life,
Right.
or a
Right.
betrayal by a friend or a spouse or whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, those are all traumatic experiences.
Incredibly.
And that's what we address today. That's definitely, or
Right.
that's what we address every time when we're talking.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I think a lot of times we make excuses to try to normalize things in our mind. We're like, someone go, well, my mom just liked to drink a lot, or, my dad just liked to drink a lot, or a lot of kids had to fend for themselves after school, or, like oh well, my whole town went through a tornado. It's not just me. I didn't, or I could say like there's like the survivor's guilt kind of thing where you go like for me after Hurricane Harvey, and I go, well, my house didn't flood. Or we would hear a lot of people say, oh, well, we only had 1 foot. My neighbor had 4 feet or 7 feet, or, and we try to backpedal to say, well, it's, what I went through is normal. And so I shouldn't be feeling anything about it. Because we want to make it seem like it's okay, make excuses there. And I think that's probably a very familiar thing for them to
I
do that.
think that too, but I think, and there's a reason why Tamara and I were kind of going back and forth on what to call this segment, is because I think some of that response, or that inclination to say, oh, I'm good. I don't
Mhm,
want to feel this, or I don't feel like maybe I like people had it much worse than me, or, whatever, all the
mhm.
reasons that you give, or you just don't want to go through the pain because there's a lie that we hold on to that tells us, well, you know what? I mean, I make too much out of everything. I'm too dramatic, and
Mhm,
so maybe I keep hearing that lie that, oh, I'm too
mhm.
dramatic, or I try to get too much attention. And so I just need to be small, and I need to
Yeah,
not bring attention to myself. I mean, that could be
yeah.
a reason, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I think a lot of times the lie that we believe about ourselves comes out of something from childhood,
Hmm.
or comes out of, um, maybe it comes out of an emotionally abusive time in your life, which could be your adult life. But at some point in our life, we have accepted words that someone else has given to us as the
Hmm.
truth. We thought, well, they seem like they've got it together, or they seem like they're in control, and so they must be telling me the truth about this about myself. And it's
Yeah.
bull crap. It's just bull crap.
Exactly.
In
I
that case,
know.
it's just bull crap. Um, so the thing is, when we allow these lies to have power over us, and we decide that we're not going to deal with something, then it gives power to the trauma and the lie.
Hmm.
And trauma, abuse, lies, any kind of darkness like that, when we feed it, it grows. And so, what we want to do is bring truth into our life, because that allows light to come in. And we know that darkness cannot exist where there is light. So, let's talk about this. Let's talk about some of these lies.
Nice.
Mhm.
Before we go into the lies, I just want to remind everybody
Yeah.
that, we're Tamara and Shannon with hopefulheartsministry.org.
Yes.
And I think now that we're doing this on our own, I don't want to ever forget to just say that and say who we
Right.
are. So that I know we introduced ourselves in the beginning, but I just want to make it very clear that you guys can reach us by our website, hopefulheartsministry.org. Um, Hopeful Hearts, it's plural hearts, one ministry.
Yep.
So Hopeful Hearts Ministry. And we want to hear from you. Like, we want to go through this. If any of these podcasts that we're doing, if you have comments, if you have more questions, if you want to share part of your story, if you have suggestions or you want to hear us talking about something else, please, 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 we want to know. We want to
Please.
hear from you.
Yes.
And you can reach us by the website, or you can reach Tamara. It's Tamara, Tamara at hopefulheartsministry.org, or Shannon at hopefulheartsministry.org, or just info. So it's very easy to reach us, and we would love to hear from you. So just wanted to
Absolutely.
say that real quick. But real quick, I wanted to go in. I am going to self-promote, just if you don't mind, Tamara, but all of
Please.
this goes
I don't
back
mind
into
at
Hopeful
all.
Hearts. This is my it's my last book that I wrote, my latest book. It's been 2020. I wrote it during COVID. I wrote it before COVID began, or as COVID. I was writing it as COVID was taking place. You know what I mean?
Right.
Before we actually
Yeah.
went into whatever. So anyway, it's
And we
called
weren't scared to
Reclaimed.
death yet.
I know, right? It's called Reclaimed: How to Overcome Trauma and Gain Healthy Control of Your Life. And one of the things that I write in here is about the lies. But before I talk about some of these lies, I just even have mentioned of people just there. I'll mention my own lie, and I want Tamara to work. I want us to go through each of our lies and just some
Yeah.
ideas of how we've worked through that and how we do the opposite, how we've overcome. But I know that we did this in our very first podcast, read Ephesians. I won't read the whole thing, but this is where this come from. This is directly, in my opinion, from the living word, from the word of God, Ephesians. And let me find it. Hold on. Where is it? I thought I had. Hold on. Sorry. I thought I had it right here, and I don't.
Okay.
There it is. I found it. I found it.
Okay, good.
Okay. So let no one deceive you with empty arguments, right? Which is pretty much lies. For
Mhm.
because of these things, the wrath of God is coming upon the disobedient. So do not be associated with them. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light. And that's Ephesians 5:6. And I love that, because to me, and I keep going, if you want to keep reading, it's Ephesians 5:6 through 20 that I highlight throughout this whole book. But the biggest aspect of this is that God is saying, look to me, trust me, do not believe in the lies that the enemy is telling you. I mean, look at Adam and Eve in the beginning, if you eat from that tree,
Yep.
you can have, all knowledge, and he
Mhm.
doesn't want you to eat from that tree or whatever. And then after they ate, then not only did they feel that shame and that, and suddenly needed to clothe themselves, and they saw
Mhm.
everything, but then they constantly felt that lie of that shame, right?
Right.
Where God was like, I still love you.
Yes.
I forgive you. I still love you. You do have to reap
Mhm.
the what's the word I want to use? The consequences, right?
Yeah.
But I'm
Right.
going to bring good from it, which he did. He brought about, our whole generations of people and godly
Right.
people. So if I'm
But they
misspeaking,
believed enough of that lie that they continued to not trust God and make
right,
mistakes. So,
right. So here's some lies that I literally have when I've worked with people over the last 11 years. These are some
mhm.
of their lies. You're
Okay.
stupid and a whore. You're not good enough. That's probably one of the most common ones, is that I'm just not good enough. I'm
Not good
not good
enough.
enough.
Yeah.
You can't do anything right. You're not
Mhm.
allowed to show emotion. You're weak. No one is there to protect you. You're
Mhm.
nothing more than the dirt on the bottom of my shoe.
Yep.
Um, and you live in fear, and you'll always be in fear. So that's just a few examples. I'll tell you mine, and then Tamara, I want you to
Mhm.
go and tell me
Please.
yours. But mine is, I don't have a right. Like, I don't have a
Mm.
right to speak up. I don't have a right to say how I really feel. I don't have a right to A, B, C, and D. And that comes from, now I recognize it comes from many levels actually of abuse, because I kept living that lie.
Right.
But it started with the fact of a boundary at 3 years old being broken, where, a family member that I loved and that you're supposed to feel comfortable with and safe with, you know, took that from me. And I felt like I didn't have a right to say no, or a right to, not be able to, say this doesn't feel good, or I don't feel right by this,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever the case. But that perpetuated within my own, family. And, my dad ran the house with fear. God bless him. I love him. He's passed, and I appreciate so much of what he's done and how
Mm-hmm.
I am raised. But then there was also this sense of, you have no right to speak because it's only me that gets to say what I want
Right.
to say,
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about you? What about yours?
Um, I have I have two really big lies that I battle every day. And it's funny because they're the polar opposite of
Mm,
each other. One is you are not enough, and one is you are too much.
mm.
And the you are too much. There's I could tell you some stories, so many stories, but um, I am an only child, and was as a small child, my parents built a lot of confidence into me. I was not precocious. I don't think I was. I don't think I was precocious, but I was confident a little bit. But 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 I wasn't like a snotty
Yeah.
braggart or but I was confident. And then kind of coming into the world of, like with middle school and high school, and people being like, who do you think you are? You you're too much. No, you think you're so good, or you think you're so this, you think you're so that. And it being like, gosh, like, am I not supposed to be that? So there's that on all levels, you know. And then the you're not enough of being, well, you're not enough for me to play with you. You're not enough. Um, you're not enough as you are unless you let me do things to you. You let me touch you, or you let me, you know, abuse you in this way. You're not enough as you are for me to stick around. You're not enough. Um, you don't provide enough value to this situation for me to give my time to it. Um, so I go back and forth, and I feel like I have for a lot of my life of trying to do a dance of who am I? Who's it okay to
Mhm.
be? Because I don't want to be too much for the situation, but I don't want to be not enough, because either way, somebody's going to leave me. So I am I am leavable. That's
No.
that's the third
See, and
big
I
lie.
hear that and I cringe because I'm
I
like,
know.
no,
Hmm.
and, and,
I
and I
know, and
feel
I
that,
do same for you. I'm like, "Oh, don't
yeah,
do that, don't think that."
don't feel that way, or I
I
don't want
know,
you to feel that way, or that's not how
right?
I feel about you. And,
Exactly.
but we all
Mhm.
have these, lies. I
Yep.
don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're male, female, whatever.
Mhm.
I don't care. We all have a lie or two or whatever. I know I have
Right.
others, but that was my big one. That, and it does affect how we go about life
Yeah.
and what makes us stop and go, oh, maybe I shouldn't move forward with this, or maybe I shouldn't say that, or maybe I shouldn't. And
Mhm.
then we very well could miss something that life has for us because we're
Yeah.
listening to the lie,
I
you
was talking
know?
to a friend the other day that God had clearly opened a door for her. I mean, it was
Mhm.
so clear to me, that God had opened a door, something that she had been praying for. And all of a sudden she's like, but really? Like, I don't know, because I don't know that I am good enough to do this. And
Aw.
I don't know if I'm worthy enough for it. And it was like, no, go, run to that door. But
Yeah.
But that's how the
and
enemy
then
works.
and therein lies that thought of, I don't want to, like, I don't, sometimes we can block our blessings because we're
Yes.
so afraid of the failure. We allow the lie to stick.
Right.
And so
Right.
we block blessings because we're afraid of the pain that we have to go through to get to the
Mhm.
good, right? Or we're afraid of that failure. Nobody wants to feel the pain of failure. Nobody wants to feel the pain of lost love. Nobody
Right.
wants to feel the pain of
Mhm.
whatever it is that could be a huge blessing. And we block it because we keep hearing the lie, well, I'm too much for them anyway. And I
Mhm.
don't want to have to hear that I've stepped on somebody's toes, or that I have
Right.
said the wrong thing, or whatever, right? That might come with that particular lie.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten that too. When I got cancer, somebody might argue that they didn't say this, but they did. I was told, don't make this a bigger thing than what it needs to be. And that was because um, I, there's no doubt. I have a dramatic nature about me. There's no doubt about it.
Okay.
But I would like to
I
think.
don't think that.
I'm glad you
I,
say that, Tara.
I don't think
But
that. Like honest
well,
to God, I think you're one of the least dramatic people I know.
just
Well,
kidding.
don't
I'm
make that
kidding.
face.
If y'all aren't watching this, I just made a really ugly face. But when I was a little girl, when I was 3, there is a picture of me where I have literally, I'm bent all the way over. So I'm like a little triangle with my head on the ground. I'm 3 years old with my little frilly, diaper thing,
Yeah. Right.
butt hanging up in the air, and I'm
Yeah.
screaming, because I didn't get
Yeah.
whatever, or I'm trying to
Right.
make a scene. And I think it was cute as can be, but I'm
Of
sure that
course.
I was a lot to deal with as a
You were
child.
3. Only a 3-year-old.
Right.
It isn't dramatic.
Or I remember I wrote about this in Exposed. I remember because I mean gosh, you guys, I we all do. It's not just me,
Mhm.
but I just let a lot of lies hit me. And
Yeah.
I always felt very ugly. I felt like I was the one, I had a lot of good friends, but everybody else was prettier than me, or everybody else, nobody else had to wear glasses like that, or nobody had as bad as acne as I
Oh.
did, or whatever the situation, right? And I remember sitting on my dad's lap and just crying, I'm so ugly, I'm so ugly,
Right.
and and he loved me through it. But what I would hear from my siblings or whatever is, you're so dramatic, or so dramatic, or whatever.
Right.
And so as I kept going on into life, my personality never changed, but I
Yeah.
did block some things. Like I went through, I can't even breathe. I didn't know I was going to go here. I was in drama from 8th grade. I loved drama. I did. I loved
Yeah.
it. But I never tried out for a play because I didn't want to, right? I didn't want to feel that
I
sense
don't
of
wanna.
rejection or
Yeah.
failure if I didn't do well, if I wasn't good enough, if I didn't, I just, the fear, all of it was wrapped up into that. But yet I did all the programs. Like I was in a special drama class all through high school, all 4 years, where we even worked with Austin College. And so I just would always turn something down. I didn't want to be a part of any major play or whatever. And so that just kind of, I was involved with it, but then so I was always told, like, oh, you're always wanting to be in the spotlight. And it always bothered me because I was like, but no, I really don't, because I always kind of avoided the spotlight. So as God took that, and as I reached into my 20s, or actually my 30s, when I started speaking and got on, and
Mhm.
then actually was on stage and
Right.
speaking in front of thousands, that came, I mean, all that I learned came through
Yeah.
clearly,
Of
or I hope so.
course.
I hope people enjoy when they hear me speak. But um, that was my first time to really be in front of a group of people was when I did one of my first talks in front of 800 people at a ecumenical event here in the Kingwood area. And I love it. I absolutely love it. But I also had somebody in my circle at the time that would just make comments, it would be
Mm.
perpetuated by other people if it was heard. And then it was a kidding, right? They were joking or kidding, but it really, really stuck with me that, oh, you just always want the attention, or you're just wanting the stage, or you're wanting, you know what I'm saying? Are you following?
I'm
Like,
totally following you.
I'm trying not to like put anybody under the bus, but it really hurt. So I was
I'm sure.
constantly feeling like, oh, I have to dummy down. I have
Yeah.
to not let anybody know how much I really enjoy this, or
Mhm.
I didn't invite them to come listen I didn't do a lot around here anymore. I just
Yeah.
always went away. I was always asked to go somewhere else to go do other events. And like we have an event April
Mhm.
15th. It scares me to death. I haven't done an event since in Kingwood since I did that first one.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that, like, you know what I mean? And so because of how strong that is, right? And to be told, like, don't make a bigger deal than it needs to be. Don't be
Okay.
dramatic.
I
Don't be
have
too
to speak into
much.
this for just a minute because, and this is not, I didn't think we were going here either, but
I love
I have
how God works with us on these
to
podcasts.
speak some truth into this. And I wish I had my Bible in front of me right now to look up exactly where it is. But I think about when Jesus did his first miracle at the wedding, like when he turned water into wine, and he had said at first, like, it's not my time. And his mother was like, get over there and get some wine. I mean, that's the Tamara version. That's not exactly how Mary said it, but um,
I like to think that Mary was,
right, get over there. We need some wine.
get
Come
over
on there,
there.
Jesus.
We need some wine.
Take care of that, Jesus. But but I think about how Jesus had to leave his hometown because the people in his hometown were like, just Joseph's boy. Come on. Like that is just he is just a carpenter. Who does he think he is? Standing up here now telling us that he is the son of God. He cannot be doing that. I'm sure his own brothers and sisters were like, "Oh, Jesus again." Jesus standing up here again. Now, I listen, I am not comparing you or I to Jesus, but I'm saying like the people who are closest to us, and I
Mhm.
think that that's kind of the point of all this, the people who are closest to us don't always see us in the light that God wants us to be seen. Um, they don't see us fairly. We don't see our closest people fairly. We're too close. It's
Mhm.
like you can't look super close at a quilt and find a whole lot of beauty in it because you're looking at the tiny thing. You see the beauty when you look at the whole quilt. And I think that whoever those people were, they were full of horse manure because
We love Jesus, but we cuss a little bit. I'm
right,
just
but
kidding.
like, you just um but we put too much power in people that
I gave it
love
life.
us or
Yeah,
that we
absolutely.
love um because we think that they're all knowledgeable and all truthful,
Mhm.
and that is just not always the case. It's
Yeah.
just not always it's not
Well,
always
and
the
it wasn't
truth.
even so much that I gave them more authority. It was just that I think because it piled on of
Yeah,
something that I just always
they were
heard or
close, and
always
so they're
felt.
hearing it. Yeah,
Right, right. And so it just really stuck with me, and I'm an empath. I mean, that's just
yeah,
the truth be told if y'all don't know
me
what the
too.
difference is. But I mean, we're unfortunately the ones that can be enablers and all of that, but we're the ones
Hmm.
that empaths just have this desire to want to make sure that, people are good, that everybody's okay, the
Right.
situation's okay, that I'm liked,
We
that
sense
there's
all the
not a
feelings in the
problem,
room. We feel
all
all
the
the things.
feelings. exactly. All the things. That's
All the
Tamara's
things.
book that she's going to write at some point. Um, or hopefully she's starting to write it. But
Yeah.
anyway, but yeah, I mean that is that's what's happened. And I mean, as I grew
Yeah.
stronger, as I went through this and worked through a lot of it in
Hmm.
therapy, and as obviously now I'm still working through with Tamara on this
Hmm.
podcast. Um, no, I've learned how to definitely overcome and
Hmm.
but then it really even got to the point where I mean even I wasn't going to go up to my church people and go, hey, why don't you have me speak? Why are you bringing,
Right.
for free, like why are you bringing somebody else
Right.
that for however much money and flying them in when I'm right here, like
Yeah.
that, then that really would upset me too, but it is what
I
it
might
is.
get
But
that.
anyway, I know.
So
But
I read this quote the other day, and it well, it was not really quote, like a little story thing, but it really stuck with me. And I think I got it
mhm.
because I grew up in the north where people had basements. When you live in Houston, you can't have a basement because if you dig,
I
you
know.
hit,
It's
you know,
be
we're
watered.
our, we're like we're at sea level. So you dig a little bit and there's water. Excuse me. So, but they were talking about um looking looking at houses. These people were wanting to buy a house and they're looking and they found this house and it was so cute, but the basement was like super moldy and like water was like oozing out of the walls. And that can happen in basements when if there's like a break in the foundation, or the
Mhm.
base, it's not been sealed right, or it's just really old, whatever. And they were this story kind of leading into the idea that dealing with the lies from our past, dealing with trauma by just trying to cover it up or ignore it is like letting that moldy basement just be like going down there with a bleach bottle and like, "Oh, I'm just gonna spray this little spot here," but not fix the crack where the water's spraying in. And that it's the same thing. It's like we have to go in and attack the lies and
Mhm.
say, "Where does this lie come from? And
Mhm.
why are we believing it? What's the root cause there?"
Mhm.
Because until we fix that foundational truth, that foundational lie, then anything we try to build off of that is going to be faulty.
Mhm.
So I think that's why, you and I are so passionate about helping others acknowledge
Mhm.
the abuse and the trauma that they have gone through. Because if you don't acknowledge it, you go, well, that's not really a thing. It's like going down there with a Clorox wipe and cleaning off one brick of the basement instead
Mhm.
of dealing with the whole foundational issue.
Mhm.
Those lies just spread and they make more cracks and they make more
Right.
mold and
And
then it's
you
moldy.
can't keep, putting,
Mm.
like you said, you can't keep covering them up. You could
Right.
for a little while, but
You go down there with
eventually
some paint and just paint it over and you're like, this
right.
look
But eventually they'll reveal themselves. It's
right.
funny that you mentioned that. I know that story, but I was just talking to somebody today and only a few hours ago, and she was talking about they had bought this house and there was a add-on, like a built-on to this house.
Yeah.
And they didn't, this wasn't the inspector didn't catch it, which is shocking and not a good
Yeah.
thing. Um, and
Yeah.
apparently their dogs started digging it. It was linoleum tile, but they started digging at the tile, and then there was
Ah,
like this patio wood. What they had done was on the patio had just covered it with linoleum tile and then built a room up.
mm,
And that is not soundly, that's not secure in any
wha-
way or form. This is an
oh
old
my
wooden
word.
patio that in
Like an old
Kingwood,
deck,
Texas, yeah, an old deck,
the
uh,
mold capital of the
most,
world.
yeah, with termites.
Yeah.
Imagine the termites. Imagine if it just all falls apart and then you got your whole room
Right.
to come crashing
Your whole
down.
house built on linoleum.
I was like, oh my goodness. Anyway, but that's just give me the same visual, right? That we could sit
Yes.
there and make something look pretty, and we can make ourselves seem like everything's okay. And I speak
Yes.
from my own doing this because I did this. I'm guilty of this, of saying, no, look, I've got this nice house. I drive a decent
Mhm.
car. I've got these beautiful kids. We're doing well in school. You know, I'm doing this at the church. Everything is just fine. And I'm not going to show all the ugly that I have, that I'm
Right.
living inside, you know?
Right.
Because you feel like, oh, I just don't like, nobody's going to want to hear what I have, or I don't want to be too
Yeah.
dramatic, or I'm not enough, you know, whatever the lie is, you
Too
keep it
much. I'm
all
not
there.
enough. I'm dramatic.
Right.
Mhm.
And then unfortunately, if it's not brought out as working, like just bringing it up when you speak with Tamara and I and working through it in therapy, and if you can't bring it up on your own, I'm most certain, and I hate to say this, and sometimes it could be you could be 80 by the time it finally comes
Yeah.
up, because I've had people in their 80s come to Hopeful Hearts.
Yes.
It will reveal itself. Something will
It
happen,
will.
and it will all that whole
Like,
room will come crashing down, or the water will come
yes.
pouring into the basement,
Yep.
and it will reveal itself. And so it's better to be able to think ahead of the game and take it one step at a time.
Yes.
Start working on it one thing at a time, to where it's not overwhelming, or it's not too much, or that
And I
sort of
had
thing.
somebody say to me a while back that, like, well, but if people knew this about me, then they would see that everything else in my life is a lie. And I was like, hold on.
Mm,
Everything else in your life is not a lie.
hmm
Just because you had this, just because you're believing this, that doesn't mean that you're not a successful business person. That doesn't
hmm
mean that you don't have smart, beautiful, healthy children. It doesn't mean uh, that you're not smart. It doesn't mean that
hmm
you're unlovable. It doesn't mean that you have a terrible
hmm
marriage. Like, all of these things exist in spite
hmm
of what you've gone through. Like, imagine the blessing that could unfold in your life if you stopped believing that one thing,
hmm
that one thing that is so untrue
hmm
and is so against the foundation of the rest of your house, you
Yeah.
know?
hmm
And I think you and I get it as much, if not more, than a lot of people. Like, we get that there can be some drudgery in having to rehash your story over
hmm
and over and over to somebody, to a new therapist. Somebody goes, "Oh, I've done therapy before, that didn't work." Well, try it again with somebody else, because just because one therapist wasn't good for you doesn't mean therapy in general is bad. It's like, you have a bad doctor doesn't mean you quit going to the doctor altogether. You have a bad dentist doesn't mean you never go to the dentist again. You you try somebody else and see, and I get that it's like, okay, I got to go through all that, get to know you and tell my whole story. And, I got to start peeling back those
hmm
layers. That's where the healing is in,
hmm
it's in the peeling back of the layers. Because I think, what was it? Was it Thomas Edison that said there was, like, he didn't, I forgot the number. I'm just going to say 90. I didn't fail 90 times. I found 90 ways to not make a light bulb work.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I know I
Yeah.
just botched that whole thing up, but it's like, what if all the times that you've tried to talk about this, or all the
hmm
times you tried to do therapy, or all the times you tried to go to Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics
hmm
Anonymous or Celebrate Recovery, or you tried to get in an accountability group with someone, what if all those times were just God peeling back a layer so that
Right.
you would be ready for the blessing?
Absolutely. Amen to that. And one thing what I've come to
Preach.
realize, Well, and you tell me if this is the same for you too, because I've recognized this for myself, and I really do. This is even the concept when I wrote this chapter. I kind of went off
Yeah.
on this as well. The when you do work through a level of that onion, right? If
Yeah.
you do, when you do work on a
Yeah.
certain layer, and you really truly worked on it, and then let's say you take a break and you go do something else,
Yeah.
and maybe you work on a different aspect, and it when you
Right.
and then you find a new therapist. A lot
Yeah.
of times you don't even have to go back. You don't have to say the whole
Oh,
thing
yeah.
again. Or you could even
Yeah.
just sum it up in a sentence just because you truly have worked through it. So you don't have
Right.
to. I think a lot of people feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to,
I'm gonna start all
go through
over
the
again.
whole thing. And how do I say everything? And I always say, like, no, you will know what you need to share by what you need to work on. And if you feel like you need to go from the beginning, that means that you
Mm-hmm.
truly have not worked through it as much as maybe you needed to. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And I mean, I've reread my first book. Surprisingly, even though I wrote it, it's like I don't remember everything
Yeah.
that I wrote. I
Right.
mean, but
Makes
see,
sense.
I remember when I wrote it because I needed to get it all out. And these were things that were really just their memories and everything that were stuck with me. But my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, I wrote that in 2010. So good
Yeah.
Lord,
A
20
long
something
time
years
ago.
ago. And when it's been a long time even since I've read it again, but I remember reading it again and thinking, oh my gosh, like I don't even remember, I don't even remember that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's so far from me now that it's
Yeah.
not even, it just doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah.
And so, one thing I would love for you guys to do, I want to give y'all a practical thing to do is,
Ooh,
if
love
you can
this.
sit down in your journal and if you can you write down as all the lies that you have if you want, but even
Mm-hmm.
just kind of find the one. I want you then next to it is to write what the exact opposite of that is, regardless if you feel it or not, but write
Yeah.
down the exact opposite. And then I want you to really think about like just the facts of who
Mm.
you are. The
Yeah.
facts, not what other people think, not what you think. That's all subjective. That's all I'm talking about the facts. I am a mother of two boys. I have a job that does this. I
Mm-hmm.
have, whatever your
Right.
facts are. I have a graduate degree. I have
Mm-hmm.
whatever you've accomplished, whatever. I want you to write those facts down. And
Right.
I really want you to take some time and look at them and hopefully see the truth over the lie and compare and read that truth with your facts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how God will start working on you to recognize that you're not that lie. Look at what, as you were talking about, Tamara, despite the lie, you've
Right.
managed to do great things.
Yeah.
Despite the lie, you've managed to survive and thrive to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not one person I know that couldn't least write one or two facts about themselves
Yeah.
and see that truth over the lie and
Mm-hmm.
say, wow, okay, like I've done something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
I just,
big.
yeah. Hmm.
That's big. You know, it kind of made me laugh. Wow.
I think I
Have we ever
always
talked
make
about?
you
You do.
laugh.
You do
I'm
make me
just kidding.
laugh because it made me think of The Office. Did you watch The Office?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Well, my family, we're huge fans of The Office, and we rewatch it all the time. And I saw the episode the other day. It was on. I was cooking dinner. It was one of the towards the very end when Dwight Schrute's, not his grandmother, his aunt died, and they're
Mhm.
all out there, and everybody is just saying facts about her, and I just giggled through the whole thing because they're out, like they're burying her out in the field, and the neighbors pull up. They don't even get out of their truck, and they're it's like, has anybody mentioned she was 5'3"? Yep. Okay. Has anybody? They're laying this woman in the ground, and they're like, uh, she had a 113-acre farm. She was 5'3". We're not a family of emotion and flowery
Gosh.
elaboration. It's like we just the facts as we put her in the ground. So, but I love that. Just in your journal, just the facts. Because if
Right.
you try to qualify something, there's a good chance that it is colored
Hmm.
by those lies. So just the facts.
Hmm.
Just the facts.
I mean, I was working with this couple right a year before COVID, and I was working with somebody on. I was
Mm-hmm.
doing ecumenical speaking as well, and just trying to get my name out there. And she was going and doing my um, biography or write up,
Yeah.
and she was listing it, and she looked at me and she goes, "Girl, you've done so much." Or she said, "How could you act like, I mean, like you don't even recognize what you've done?" And I was like, I mean, it that was a moment that it really hit me because I
Yeah.
was like, I always made everything small. Oh, I
Uh-huh.
finally published my first book, but I don't want to make a bigger deal than it needs to be. So
Right.
I'm just going to make it small. I don't want anybody to think I'm too much. So I'm taking
Right.
your lie on. So look
I
at me. I'm
know.
sorry. I didn't
Right.
realize how much of your lie I have in me.
Right. Why we're such good friends. We believe the same lies.
Well, I mean, on the other hand, it could be I don't have a right. Like I don't have a right to
Yeah.
say, "Oh my gosh, I just published
Right.
my first book. I'm so
Right.
excited." Right? Or, "Oh
Uh-huh.
my gosh, I'm cannot believe I just got cancer and I'm scared to death," or I
Right.
mean, one or the other. Like I've been told both on the same
Yeah.
spectrum, and I always felt like, okay, I need to be small with that. Like I don't want to make
Which I am
anybody
sorry.
else
Like
feel
that makes me want to
uncomfortable.
laugh too. I'm like, come on. Who do you think you are to have cancer? Don't be talking about it and making a big deal.
Right.
I mean, I know who said that, but like, just can't even imagine being like,
Right.
don't make this the big deal. Come on,
Right. Right. I
cancer.
know. And maybe somebody
Mhm.
else it wouldn't have bothered them as much.
Right.
And that's the other thing. Maybe that somebody could hear that and it so go be like, whatever, screw you. This is
Right.
how I feel, right? Maybe it would not have bothered somebody. And I want to acknowledge that maybe I
That's
am sensitive on some things, but I'm not going to apologize for that. It's because I have certain lies that I deal with
but
and
that goes back to the
that's
thing I just
okay.
said too, that it's like if a stranger
Hmm.
had said to you, don't make a big deal out of this. It's not a big deal, cancer.
Hmm.
It's a small deal, cancer. So don't try to make it about you. Don't try to make like
Hmm.
you would have thought, what a
Hmm. I would have
jack.
said some
Like, no,
choice
like,
words.
right? You would have said some
Yeah.
serious choice
Uh-huh.
words and been like, screw you, get out of my face. You get no life in my
Hmm.
life. Like, I'm not
Hmm.
giving you any energy. But we
Hmm.
don't, that's the thing. We don't believe the things that strangers, like, we allow the people who we have given life to, like, we give them the access. And so then we believe what they say.
Hmm.
And it's fooey.
It is phooey. I don't like
It
it
is
either.
fooey. It's fooey. But I love that. That is good homework to take the
Thank you.
lie,
Hmm.
write the lie, write the opposite. So if you're like me, you believe two lies that are
Hmm.
complete opposites of each other, like they're both the complete polar opposites, but they're two lies that I'm believing. And then just write down the middle. No,
Hmm.
what are the facts here?
Hmm.
What are the facts about
Yeah.
me? She's 5'1".
Yeah.
She has white hair.
I have my hair. Come on, Tamara, you have done so much. I mean, but that's the thing. And when
No,
I
but
say write down your facts, I mean, we're being funny. Of course, you
yes,
can
I
write
am.
down that fact. I have
Right.
beautiful eyes. Oh, or whatever. I mean,
Well, but
I'm not
sometimes
saying
I
that
think
about myself, but
no, but I think
just,
sometimes I think though some writing those things
yeah.
too, where it's like, okay, if I can say this and know that it's
Hmm.
true, then I can say this and it can also
Right.
be true.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if somebody else was needing to introduce you and say what
Yeah.
you've done, and if you're, I
Mhm.
mean, and this is for anything, and I want to speak like to those that maybe don't have chosen not to have like a career and maybe don't even have kids at home, and but they're
Right.
taking care of something else. Like I don't
Right.
want anybody to feel like, oh, well, I don't have a job or I don't do this, so I
Yep.
don't have any accomplishments. That's not true. And if you have had children, if you've had a child and lost one, you still,
Mm-hmm.
that's an
Right.
accomplishment,
You're
and
still a
that's
parent.
something that you should write down. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Or just, if you've had children, that in itself is a huge feat. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about your facts, like those things
Yeah.
that you truly have done and have lived through.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's so much, there's just so much.
Right.
Um, and I know that we're about to end. And Tamara, I didn't ask this before, but do you mind? Because it kind of goes on this, because I did feed into a lie for a few years until God. Do you mind if I share what happened last week? The whole weird God story. I
Yeah.
won't mention names, but
Yeah. Oh, that's
um,
good. This was amazing. This was an amazing story.
so Tamara is hosting a book study, and it's still going. So y'all are
Mm-hmm.
still welcome
We're
to
reading
join us.
Lisa Turkhurst's latest book, Good Boundaries and Goodbyes, which is
Mhm.
amazing. Whether you join us or not, you need to pick that book up because it is good.
It is a good book. Very,
Mm.
and we at
Yeah.
Hopeful Hearts have done two other of her books before this. So,
Mhm.
I mean, it's just right in line with what we've done, and kind of on
Yeah.
the same journey. It's she's on this journey of learning how to do good
Right.
goodbyes versus, for what God wants, right? And just to
Right.
be able to read and understand his
Mm-hmm.
word, and to discern. I think that's probably the best way to
Yes,
even say that, is
it
just to
is. I
discern.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So here we are, we're at this study, and this woman comes in, never met her. She looks familiar, but never met her.
A
And,
woman who
she's
I've
got,
known for a couple of years.
yeah. And she's, we're all sharing different things.
Mm.
She's saying some really good things I took from her. And then at the end of the study, she asked for a ride home. She doesn't feel comfortable driving at night. Could anybody take her home? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm heading out that way anyway. I'll take you home. We get in the car, and she said, oh, I mentioned about being a youth minister or something. And she said, oh, where were you a youth minister? And I told her the Catholic Church. And I said, but then I stopped and I started Hopeful Hearts Ministry. But now I have Tamara, really working on that. And she looked at me and she goes, oh, well, you should know my daughter. And she said her daughter's name. And that was a name that I haven't heard in 8 years. And sure enough, just as backstory, I had worked with her daughter, um, and worked with her for quite a good 4 or 5 months, and then just didn't hear from her, which is not unusual. I mean, when we do work with you guys, like, we work with you and then you go on to therapy and you're with your therapist. Like, we're not here to
Mhm.
hold your hand for a long period of time. You always
Right.
always want you to come back and update us and tell us
Right.
what's going on, by all means. But um I mean, we always want to know.
Right.
But so it just wasn't unusual, right? For me not to, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, hear from her again. And I knew that there were certain aspects about her that were different. And anyway, I don't want to speak too much and all that. So um she says her daughter's name, and the caveat to this is that I knew that her daughter committed suicide. And
Mm-hmm.
the biggest aspect of this is that, I mean, it was, a few 4 or 5 months since I had worked with her that I believed that she had done that. I was out of town, so I didn't even learn about it until 3 months after the fact. I was devastated.
Yeah.
And it really stunted me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Emotionally, sometimes working with people, because she was also younger. She was in her 20s, and I was just like, oh, I didn't do enough. Again, here's, I didn't do enough.
Right.
I could have done more. I wasn't there
Mm-hmm.
for her, all these things. And
Mm-hmm.
it was not a good, it was hard. And it was one of those things that I didn't want really anybody to know at all that I worked with her, because, oh my gosh, what if people think that I'm so
Right.
bad?
Don't go talk to Shannon. She can't
Yeah.
help you.
Right. And then as I'm saying all this, do you know the lie that I'm hearing is, of course, it's all about Shannon. Right? Oh my gosh, even as
No,
I'm saying this. Okay, but
I know.
anyways, so I'm just listening to her and she's like, "Oh my gosh, Lizzie," or I said her name. Anyway, she just loved you. She got so much from this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, "What?" And she goes, and I had given her, a little sterling silver
Yeah,
charm. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, she loved it. She was just so grateful for you." And I just looked at her, I said, "Well, I can't believe that I'm meeting you right now. Like I had no idea." Um, and and I want to tell you, like, I'm so, so sorry. Like I really felt
yeah,
like I didn't do enough and I'm so sorry. And she just looked at me with the sweetest heart. And this has been 8 years, right?
yeah.
8 years ago is when all that happened. And she said, "Don't you ever think that you helped her. What I don't even know what she went through, but you helped her and she really enjoyed that time that she had with you. She had other stuff going on." And she mentioned some things that she was like, "Don't let that be a part of any of you." And I was just like, "Okay." And then she goes, "I don't even know what led her to come to you." So she didn't know what had happened to her daughter. And I looked at her and I said, "If you want to know what happened, I'll share with you." Now, I need to
Hmm.
tell y'all, I don't remember everybody's story. I've helped a lot of
Right,
people in 11 years, and it's almost
right.
like going to confession in the Catholic Church. Like,
Yeah.
I hopefully like to think the priests just don't ever remember everybody's
Hmm.
sins or whatever. And it's true because you just
Yeah,
don't always remember everybody's details. But I did with her. I did. I think because of how traumatic it ended.
right.
And
Well
so
put.
anyway, I
Mm.
her mom goes, "I would love to. I would love to." And so I shared with her what happened, and she just looked at me and she goes, "That now makes so much more sense." And I just was like, "Oh, oh." I go, "I'm so, so sorry." And she says, "No, it just makes sense. It just, all of it now, it just makes sense." And by this time I'm at her house and she just said, "This was so good meeting you. I'll see you next Wednesday." And she just got out of the car and I just started bawling. I was just crying because what that was for me, I don't know what it was for her. I won't speak for her, but what that was for me was 8 years later, even God giving
Hmm.
me this opportunity, which I almost didn't even come to the book study that night
Yeah.
because we had done something and I was like, "Oh, I just don't know. I'll go ahead and go."
Yeah.
And he gave me this opportunity to just have closure and to hear from this woman. It's just, it's so speaks to how God is with us in
He is
every
with us.
aspect of our life.
And how blessed that in that moment, he gave you a little bit of something that you didn't even know that you needed for your healing journey. And he gave
Hmm.
her something that she had probably laid down years ago and said, I'm never going to know
Hmm.
this. And so I'm just going to move on with my healing journey because I'm never going to have that peace. And that God connected the two of you together and brought truth to a situation so that you both could have some healing.
Hmm.
Mm. Yay, God.
Yay,
Good
God.
job,
I know.
God. That
I
is so
know.
good. So,
I
um,
know.
listeners, what I want to say to you is after all of this, if you have had anything stirred up today, if you have said, you know what, maybe I should talk about this thing. Maybe I should look into something. We are here for you. That is the purpose of Hopeful Hearts Ministry is we want to walk beside you in your healing journey. We want to hold your hand for as long as it needs. We want to help you recognize the pain of your past and help you see that there is joy available to you. There is healing available to you. We want to connect you with whatever resources are out there that you need. So you can find us at hopefulheartsministry.org. And after you listen to this episode, if you would share it with a friend, if you would like it, and subscribe so that you find out and are notified when we have other podcasts. That just helps us get out there in however, all of this social media podcast algorithm witchcraft. It's not witchcraft. I don't understand the math behind it. I don't understand what makes it work,
Right.
but it's like, I know that if you like us and subscribe and share, that helps our podcast be seen in front of more people who are searching for anything under spiritual and emotional health and well-being. So just do that for us. We'd appreciate it. And we're glad that you listened today to Hopeful Hearts podcast. I am Tamara Lexo, and I'm here with Shannon Farr, and we are glad to have had time with you today. Thanks for listening.
Thank you guys. Y'all have a blessed day.